Hey folks, how you doing? This is NEcology, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm having a pretty shitty day. Looking forward to shooting this video for you folks all week, only to come and find out that my new camera rig is having a bit of an issue. I busted the geotag device I was using on my camera, but nonetheless decided to persevere, come out and shoot this video, only to discover that one of our target species is just about, past flowering, and the other is, unfortunately curled up because the weather today is quite freezing. It was about 85 degrees last weekend. Right now it's currently about 50. As you typically see in New England. And in front of us right now are two really lovely. Actually, a whole hillside of them. I'll zoom out a bit to give you a perspective. A whole hillside of this, these two lovely flowers in front of us. We have Sanguinaria canadensis, or Sanguinaria canadensis, and we have Erythronium americanum. All right, we've got Bloodroot, and we've got the yellow trout lily on the right there. And we'll get into it. I'll discuss some morphology. I'll put up some nice flowering pictures I was able to take last week. We got a tripod now. That's at least working good for the time being. And our location right now is actually currently right on the side of the Fells Way in I don't know what specific suburb we are, but essentially to the lay person, we're in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm right on the side of the road. There's some suburban houses. All the more reason to come out and check out stuff like this because it's easily accessible to you. I'm at the Middlesex Fells. We'll get into it in a little bit more, in depth in a minute here. But I just want to take a moment, just calm myself down, at least cover the two target species I wanted to tell you about. Technically, there's 4 target species. 2 of them down here in this sort of, I can show you, in this sort of, woodland. Oh, hopefully this doesn't make too much noise for the camera. This nice little wooded seep here. I'm working with the tripod, get it in focus. So this is the habitat we're working with. There's a nice little stream down there. It's quite lovely. And yeah, these guys, these 2 species of plant we've got right here. I can get those back in focus for you. And these are the 2 best individuals I could find for the time being. Are typically found growing on these moist, wooded slopes, but also, something that could come up right in your backyard if the conditions are right. So I suppose let's get into it a little bit here. So Sanguinaria canadensis here, the bloodroot, is a member of the family Papaveraceae, the poppy family, and that's, not evident if you were to actually look at the thing. It doesn't have, your traditional 4 petals as you see for a lot of them. It also doesn't have, the Fumaroidea, which is a different species, which we'll get into. We'll actually see an example of that today too. Poppy, where it has, a heavy modified tubular flower. Instead, these guys tend to have, I think, about, 6, 7, 8, 9, even up to 10 sometimes white petals surrounding, your typical, poppy sort of. Stamens and stigma there. I'll put up the picture of both of these in full bloom from last week because I got really good pictures of both these plants, so you'll be able to see the flower, for Sanguinaria canadensis right here, taken from this exact spot too. And this is a real interesting spring ephemeral. So this guy pops up super early in the spring. It's like April 22nd right now. It's got these really distinctive, you can even see them, these really distinctive leaves that curl around the flowering structure. Let me actually get down there for you. Oh, here's the one I'm looking at. So it's got really distinctive, fan-shaped leaves. And here is one of the flowers. I think these actually, I don't know if this is done and gone to fruit for the season or if this is just curled up because the weather's cold. And these do exhibit, thermonasty to an extent. They can, kind of shelter their inflorescence in their leaves like that. Real interesting. Talk about the flower structure when I don't have one open right in front of me, but nevertheless the picture will be up there for you. And ecologically speaking, so these guys are ephemerals, so they pop up super early in the spring like it is right now. They'll be blooming in March if you're a little bit, late March if you're a little bit further south of here. Still in full bloom, I thought, it'd still be in full bloom here. Evidently that was not correct. And if you're a little north of here, a little north of Boston, these guys will probably be going off, full swing right now. So, being a member of Papaveracea, they exhibit, quite a variety of toxic chemicals. The term bloodroot comes from this red sap that seeps out of the rhizome there. That'll, give you a, rather caustic burn. Not too terribly pleasant of a substance, despite its touted medical benefits, which I won't even get into. I won't humor that sort of conversation right now, because as far as I'm concerned, this is a plant you really shouldn't be making use of in that regard. It's a pretty toxic plant, like many poppies are. If you're not familiar, opium, morphine, heroin is also derived from plants in this family. Obviously, not this specific species, but you get the point. Papaver somnifera, I believe, is the opium poppy, native to Europe. So a couple other interesting facts about our friend Sanguinaria canadensis here. It's a myrmecophyte, meaning that it has, an ant-related ecology. Its seeds, when it does, fruit and go to seed, and the seeds will burst out of the little poppy pod there, which is pretty typical of the family. They usually exhibit those little pods. They have something on the seed called an ilicifolia, which is an attractant to ants, sorry, let me clarify there, which functionally serves as a bait for the ant. So the ants are attracted to this little coating on the seed, again called an ilicifolia. They drag the seeds underground to store them, essentially guaranteeing, that your seed is getting planted underground somewhere sheltered and protected from anything that might, eat the whole seed. And then the ants, they eat the ilicifolia, and they will actually discard the rest of the seed of the plant. So, couple benefits of that. Number one, like I just hinted to, you have ants dispersing and effectively protecting your seed, being invested in the little food source around it. And then you also have, the ants will typically hang out around these plants, so you also have the benefit of having, ant bouncers functionally just in your area, and ants will aggressively deter, a lot of other would-be pests to this species here. Not uncommon in the plant world. Some species, not in Papaveracea, not to my knowledge, but some species of plant in different families will actually have what are called extrafloral nectaries, and they'll make nectar not in their flowers, along their stem tissue or whatever, to attract ants and basically guarantee that the plant has a free security service, or I guess not free if you're making nectar in exchange for it. So the other plant that we're going to talk about here, growing, right next to it, as it commonly does, is Erythronium americanum, as I just said. This is the yellow trout lily. This is one of a handful of species in Erythronium you get around. If you're a little bit further south of here, you probably get Erythronium albidium, I believe it's called, which I don't know if that goes by the name. I think they call that a fawn lily is the common name. Not that it matters. It's still an Erythronium. Erythronium albidium, and the trout lilies, as they're so called, that is species in the genus Erythronium, exhibit this really striking pattern on the leaves, somewhat reminiscent of trout. I think these guys are done actually flowering. I just knocked the rest of the petals off of it, and I believe that's just the seed pod left over. But whatever. I already get the pictures of it, from last week. So going back to Erythronium, so this is, I see this guy really commonly, and the leaves are super thick and leathery, not a hair to be seen on it, just real kind of gross feeling, actually, rubbery. Little yellow flower pops out of it, lily flower. You get a single flower per plant, and then in a population, unlike this bloodroot, which was blooming prolifically when I was here last year, or bloodroot right here, which was blooming prolifically when I was here last year, you'll only generally see a handful of these in bloom in a given population. And right now he's closed up because it's cold. There's actually one a little further up the hill here. Where'd he go? Where was that guy? Yeah, there he is right there, dead center of the camera, which is a little bit more open, but not much. I bet you these are also, thermonastic. They'll probably close up shop when it gets a little too cold for them. This is another early spring ephemeral. This guy blooms super early. Again, late March if you're far enough south down the East Coast. Up here, I mean, they were, in full bloom. Well, they still appear to be in full bloom now. I don't think they're closed up shop, pollinated, but I can't say. I'm not qualified to make that sort of assessment. Anyway, I digress. This is a member of the lily family, Liliaceae. Erythronium, I don't recall if it's in the core Liliae tribe, or certainly Lilioideae subfamily, but I don't remember if they're in the core Liliae tribe. Another famous lily from the region, Clintonia borealis, is not. It's in the Clintonii tribe. It's actually kind of a weird tribe. But anyway, I'm rambling a little bit about lilies in general. So this is another spring ephemeral. I don't have as much to say about the ecology of this plant as I do with that one, other than really bizarrely, you'll typically see, hundreds, if not thousands, of these little leaves indicating that there is a mature plant here. You can see this one. I think these guys are still going, because this one right here is in bud. So maybe these are just emerging and they're just slow because it's cold today. But anyway, you'll see, hundreds, if not thousands, of these little mottled green leaves, littering, hillsides, stream sides. You get it up in the mountains, White Mountains in New Hampshire. I've seen it plenty of times up there. It's actually, this plant is in a video I did last year, one of the first videos I put out. I found one that was still blooming up there. That was all the way in May. So, you get high enough and it delays, the phenology of the plant, yada, yada, yada. Here we are in Boston, and this guy was kind of prime time last week. This week, yeah, I guess he's still hanging on. But yeah, anyway, two wonderful spring plants that, despite the fact that I can only show you them in this state now, I'm really happy that I got those photos last week. I can put those up. It's the same exact spot that I took them from just a week ago when it was a bit warmer. And we'll go talk about the fells now. We'll go talk about what specifically is going on at this site, because where we are right now, kind of in this little hillside going down to a stream, is not the main sort of geological feature of this area. And we'll get into it. We'll get up in the fells area. I'll show you a couple other, 2 or 3, maybe 4 other species of stuff that's growing in a very different habitat close by, still a part of this park, and we'll go about our business. I'll also get you a nice, habitat shot of just where we just were. I'll go up to the top and I'll shoot down for you so you can see what we're dealing with. I'll check back in with you in a second. Alright, and here's essentially just a habitat shot of what we were just on. You can see all the little Sanguinaria leaves, and then all the little Erythronium leaves popping up. Yeah, you got a few Erythronium open down there. I don't know if you can see that. Let's give this a shot. This is new territory for me. Yeah, you got a few Erythronium open over there. That's okay. Anyway, we're gonna go get a few. We're gonna go up on the rocky stuff here. I'll explain to you the concept of what a fell is, and then we'll poke around here for a little bit. But I mean, I'm feeling pretty depressed about my broken geotag cable thing. But what are you gonna do? So yeah, nice little habitat. And you'll have to pardon my shaky hands. I just put the tripod away to climb back up. And as you can see, here are a few individuals that are not gone to fruit. These ones are exhibiting thermonasty. They've closed up their flowers and they've wrapped their leaf around them to shelter them from the cold. These ones still appear to be in bloom, unlike the ones down there. They're not drooping their petals. They're actively, sheltering themselves. So this is that behavior I was talking about. So, maybe it warms up, not in the next couple of days, because it's supposed to be crappy and rainy in the next couple of days, but maybe in, middle of next week you come back by here and you'll find that, they've kind of, reopened, perhaps. I don't know. Alright, let's carry on. Okay, we'll get up to the fells in a second here, but I have to show you this Erythronium here. I've never seen one with the flower that big. Jeez, that's my pointer finger for a scale. It's like down to almost the size of my second knuckle there. And then here's much more typical one. This one's actually still, I'd say, pretty big, but oh my goodness, two impressive ones. They kind of have the run of the spot too. You don't usually see them kind of isolated. Usually they're in a little richer area with some nice broken glass behind it, because isn't that you gotta keep it a little bit depressing. Alright, so in front of us here is scenic Boston, Massachusetts, and if you're not Americans out there, this is the birthplace of the American Revolution, where they dumped the tea into the harbor down there, not near Harvard, the Habas, not near Hava, I gotta shut the fuck up. I-93, which you can see down there in the bottom right corner, it's actually the same exact highway that goes through Franconia Notch. If you've seen any of the videos I posted, up from over there. Actually, those probably aren't even out yet. Anyway, I digress. You've got Everett and the casino and the power plants, here on the left. And the immediate center, there's downtown and the waterfront, and then on the left, that's the back bay over there. Tallest building in New England right here, John Hancock Building. Prudential is next over there, that tallest building to the right. And then you got Dalton Street Tower, which is a new skyscraper they just erected, but of much more interest to me and to hopefully anybody watching this video is the habitat we've now found ourselves in. Not a lush forest as we had seen before. Rather, this is a rocky, barren outcrop, and it pays host to a unique plant community, one of which is this species right here, which we'll go take a look at in just a second. That's Quercus ilicifolia. That's the bare oak, a somewhat restricted range shrub oak that is a oak that will stay a shrub for the duration of its lifetime, which is in flower right now. No leaves on the guy. We'll go take a look at this guy real quick, and we'll say goodbye to the wonders of American car-based infrastructure for the time being. All right, I'll check in with you 1 second. All right, so in focus right now is a species, you'll see a lot on balds and barrens, such as the fells here, which I failed to explain. A fell is just a general term for a barren landscape. Different typically than a barren, like a pine barren, because those are typically flat, and fells are typically, rocky and are of higher elevation than the areas surrounding them. But nevertheless, in front of us here is a species that's able to capitalize on that barren thin soil. Like I said before, this is Quercus ilicifolia. This is a species of oak, but usually typically unknown to us here on the East Coast. There's a ton of oak species that never fully become trees, referred to as scrub oaks. This species here being one of them. Little catkin flowers on it, typical of the obviously oak genus Quercus, but then also the entire oak family Fagaceae, extending out even into other families in the oak order Fagales. You get the little leaves starting to come out. I'll put a picture up of what one of the leaves looks like for you, but right now it's in flower, and it's pretty easy to pick out and identify. Nice and red from a distance, looks quite pleasant. Bare oak is the common name for those who are curious. You ever heard anybody say bare oak or scrub oak? Okay, our luck is beginning to improve a bit. Actually in bloom here in front of us, or mostly in bloom, we've got another species in the family Papaveraceae. We've got another species of poppy. This one, however, is in the subfamily Fumaroideae, and as you can see, it looks nothing like what Sanguinaria canadensis looked like. So fumaroid poppies, Fumaroideae subfamily, have modified the four petals typical of the the four petals typical of the family into essentially a tube. So what's going on here, and I'll zoom in for you in a second, and actually I have a species growing at my house which is not native to the US, called Lamprocarpus spectabilis, or a bleeding heart, pretty common ornamentals. I'll take one of those flowers because that thing's in full bloom right now, and I'll kind of gut it, and I'll show you exactly what's going there. I don't want to dissect the wildflower. These aren't rare, but they're pretty special. That plant is also massive compared to these. Are fairly diminutive. So Capnoides sempervirens is the name of this plant. Fumaroideae subfamily of the poppy family Papaveraceae, as I already said. I like to call it the pink lemonade flower, because it kind of reminds me of pink lemonade. And again, this is a pretty damn widespread species, but you're only going to find it, in these areas like this where it's rocky, maybe a rocky forest clearing. Although typically I see columbines growing in the more shaded rocky outcrops like this. This is full sun here. I mean, it's under a shrub. I have no clue what species of shrub this is. And coming up with another species that we're going to talk about in a second, you got a blueberry here, and I'll find you a better specimen because these are starting to bloom now too. But we're going to focus on this guy right now. So Capnoides sempervirens. Common name is rock harlequin, although I like to call it the pink lemonade flower. What else do I have to say about it? Poppy family, Papaveraceae, Fumaroideae subfamily. You get a few species. In fact, we might even have a shot to go see another species, another fumaroid blooming right now. The species is Dicentra. And what do you get? You get Corydalis is in that genus, Lamprocapnos, any of the bleeding hearts. If you've ever heard of a bleeding heart, those are all Fumaroideae. We have a native species of bleeding heart, Dicentra examenia, I believe is what it's called. You also get Dicentra canadensis and Dicentra cucularia, which is Dutchman's breeches, which is a very common fumaroid, just like this one, which is the one I think we might be able to go see. I'm kind of rambling. This was just starting to barely poke out when I was here last week, and now it looks like it's doing pretty well. A couple of these are open, and why don't I dismount my camera for a second, and I'll really get in there for you, and then we'll go talk about blueberries. And at that point, I'll be in a much better mood. I'm already in a much better mood. Who am I kidding? All right, close up for you. God, that tripod's honestly a godsend. I love, being able to just stick it on something and just ramble and talk, and you can actually see what I'm talking about. So here we go. Here's the close-up of the flower. Oh, where'd he go? Again, these guys are tiny, so it's really easy to miss them, except for that striking coloration. So like I said, this is 4 petals modified into a tube. You have 2 on the outside and then 2 on the inside. Although we'll dissect it. We'll dissect a Lamprocapnos flower, and we'll make sure we really have a firm understanding of what's going on. Bunch of stamens in there, and then obviously the stigma's in there too as well. Makes a little pod like most poppies do. You get another guy. You get another one back here. A few plants. This is you'll see the foliage of it, and let's talk about that foliage everywhere. Kind of blue, heavily divided. Like a lot of fumaroids are. Not all poppies have the divided foliage, but I think most of the Fumaroideae poppies do have this divided foliage, almost reminiscent of a ranunculus. And in fact, like I was explaining before, columbines, which are in the family Ranunculaceae, actually has a really similar, form factor, and especially in the leaves. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but I mean, if you've ever seen like a meadow rue or columbine, those leaves, you know what I'm talking about. They're not as leathery as these ones are. This is nice and leathery, just like actually kind of just like the Erythronium that I was looking at before, that we were looking at before. So obviously, they grow kind of sheltered, under a shrub or even out in the open on these rocky habitats. Their leaf color kind of causes them to blend in with everything else. But those flowers, when they're ready to be pollinated, those flowers stick out like a sore thumb. And I mean, it's just a very striking plant. I'll zoom out for you. Kind of hard to freestyle with the tripod, but I mean, he's everywhere here. Coming up under some blueberries and whatever little shrub this is, and then as you can see, there's a rocky escarpment right behind us. So yeah, Capnoides sempervirens, great plant, not terribly rare. I think you get this pretty far, west, as long. Excuse me, I haven't even eaten anything yet today. I don't actually know the exact range on this one. It's pretty widespread, pretty common, and yeah, we'll leave it at that for the Capnoides, for the rock harlequin, and we'll go take a look at a blueberry. Alright, so what we got here is a flower from a plant I got blooming out in front of my house. This is a Asian bleeding heart flower. This is Lamprocapnos spectabilis, but it's also in the same subfamily as Capnoides sempervirens, the Fumaroideae subfamily. And just as a testament to how long this thing actually blooms for, it was blooming on April 22nd when I filmed the rest of the video, and it's still blooming now. What is it today? June 5th. As I sit down to do this little dissection for you, just as a testament to how long this plant blooms for. So remember, Fumaroideae subfamily, so it's got 4 petals, which is standard for a poppy. So these pink guys right here on the outside, all right, these are 2 of the petals. Peel these back, or I'll just yank them right off. 1, 2. So these come off. All right. Oh, we got one of the stamens there, but that's okay. So those are the 2 outer petals right there. Put those off to the side. Here's one of the stamens actually. Here's another stamen, 2 stamens, and then here are those interior petals right here. Pull those apart. Okay. Come on. Interior petals. So 4 petals total. There's a couple more stamens in there that didn't pop out so readily. There's that ovary. And then there's your stigma there at the base. And in fact, I can get in here. And let's see, do we have any more? Where are the other stamens? Hang on. Okay, well that's just one of the petals. Are we missing? Because these are supposed to have all. Oh, they fell off on the inside. I wasn't gentle enough. Or actually, yeah. Okay, so you have 3 and 3. My bad. All the stamens are connected in here. You have 3 on one side, 3 on the other. 2 inner petals, 2 outer petals, ovary, style, stigma. And that's pretty much it here. I'll even pull these apart for you so you can see what's going on with the stamens. Last time I did this, and I lost the footage originally, these all fell right apart. So here are your 1, 2, 3 stamens on one side. And then it's dripping pollen everywhere. 1, 2, 3 stamens on the other side. So 6 stamens, stigma style ovary, 2 inner petals, and 2 outer petals. Obviously this is not Capnoides sempervirens, but it's in the same subfamily, and it's got the same general thing going on with those little pink lemonade flowers. So I hope that helps kind of elucidate the scenario, so to speak, for you. Okay, very quick detour here, just because I don't often get a chance to photograph this thing in a habitat where it would typically, exist without human interference. But here is this is Juniperus communis. This is common juniper. I think the most widespread woody plant in the world. This thing grows basically around the globe. If you're around the northern hemisphere, I should say. Assuming you are at the correct line of latitude. But it's got its little strobili out. I think those are strobili out right now. Reproductive parts. Cupressaceae is the family, same family as redwoods, although pretty damn distantly related from redwoods, in a completely different subfamily, and divided by millions of tens of millions of years of a dispersion. There's a helicopter flying over me right now, but this plant, Jesus Christ. Yeah, there's a reason why I usually go out into the forest. But you know what? A lot of people live near cities, and it's a good idea to give them an idea of what they can go and see, even in freezing cold April, in terms of plant life right in their own backyard. That's the whole point of this channel. That's kind of the angle I take. Anyway, Juniperus communis, common juniper. Extremely widespread around the northern hemisphere. Cupressaceae is the family. We already talked about all that. But what I was getting at is this is the type of habitat, this rocky sort of barren outcrop, where it would actually grow, barring human interference. This is somewhat, they don't get much bigger than this. You get Juniperus horizontalis, you get Juniperus virginiana, which I'm actually surprised. There's a couple near me. I'll go show you that really quick too, because the blueberries will be growing all over the place here. I'm just trying to find one with a good flower on it. There's some right next to me, so we'll get to it when we get to it. But Juniperus communis, actually all the junipers, typically only come up on a rocky outcrop like this, or on a forest edge, or after a burn goes through. But due to human disturbance and our tendency to clear things away that we deem unnecessary, this plant, as well as the other 2 species of juniper, Juniperus virginiana, which does grow into a tree. If you've ever heard somebody say they got a red cedar or I got a cedar, and they live in this area, they live on the east coast. Well, there's no cedars native to North America. They're probably talking about a species of juniper, and if they're in New England, they're probably talking about Juniperus virginiana, the eastern red cedar. But with human interference, these things cannot tolerate any shade. They shoot right up, they grow super quickly when exposed to sun, and then they die basically as the forest canopy closes in on them. Because Juniperus communis is especially diminutive, but even Juniperus virginiana, the more tree-like juniper, it doesn't really get that tall. Once it gets to a certain point, the other species, which are more shade tolerant, slower growing but more shade tolerant, more patient, quickly outpace it, and then after a few years in the shade, they die back back pretty quickly. So let's go really quick. We'll go look at a Juniperus virginiana. We'll go look at a species of Vaccinium, a Lowbush Blueberry in bloom, and then we'll see if we'll make a swing by and we'll see if we can see a Dicentra cucularia, the Dutchman's breeches. I was pointing at a piece of grass there for a second. So this is why I got to use the tripod. We'll use the tripod for the Juniperus virginiana. How about that? Will that make you happy? I hope it does. All right, let's go. Without further ado, let's go take a look at that. All right, so there you go. There's a juniper. That's Juniperus virginiana. Different than the species we just saw. Same genus, different species. This one actually grows into a tree. And these have a reputation for being somewhat weedy trees. I mean, here, like I was explaining before, you know, this sort of rocky, barren outcrop is actually another one right there, if you can see it through the trees. You also get white pine growing up here. It's either a white pine or a pitch pine. I'm not sure. I wasn't paying attention. I've talked plenty about pines. That's not really what we're here to see today. We're here to see the junipers, the stuff that's only really, you know, growing, you know, on these types of habitats. Yeah, he's right there. He's right there. Well, look at this guy though. So, like I said, Juniperus virginiana is getting kind of a reputation for being somewhat of a weedy tree. It's comes up really easily in human disturbance because people will go through and they'll clear, you know, everything out, and then they'll have these things. You'll pop up everywhere in mass. If you've ever driven on the side of the highway, you know, you see the side of the highway lined with these things. As I understand it, they're pretty resistant to herbicide, and they get kind of a bad rap now, but I mean, nevertheless, it's a native species of tree. I think this one's even got, let's see, how far can we zoom in there? Not much. This is just a standard lens. This ain't a telephoto lens, but it's got the little scale-like foliage. I mean, if you're really dying to see it, I could put a picture of it. I don't really want to. I gotta put my macro lens back on anyway. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, sure, whatever. I'll go up and I'll get the foliage for you. But there's another. Yeah, you know what? Because there's another plant right below me that I want to show you. I'm really on one today, but you know what? Day started out horrible, and then I realized, hey, unlike last year, I know a lot more about this stuff, and I can actually tell you what's going on. So anyway, to make a long story short, Juniperus virginiana. This is the habitat you would typically, historically, am I even in focus here? Oh, I'm still zoomed in on the tree. You know, historically expect to see it in, but now you get it coming up on the side of parking lots, coming up on the side of roadways. You know, it's coming up in your uncle's field, and you can't figure out how to get rid of it. Why these things keep growing back in? Like I said, they grow extremely fast and extremely prolifically. I've got plenty of videos where you see them. They'll be the only thing standing in the middle of a field where the soil's, you know, too shit for anything else to grow in. That's their bag. You know, kind of similar to pitch pine, and indeed out on Cape Cod, which I've also done a couple videos on, although at this point, you know, I'm not sure which ones are out. I got at least one video out already about Cape Cod you can go check out, and these form, you know, kind of almost, you know, forests or even savannas, I'd be tempted to call them, with you know, grasses underneath, and then just sparse growth of these trees and pitch pine. I guess it is worth talking about. I'm going to talk about the Quercus ilicifolia. I'm going to talk about the blueberries. You know, it is an important species of this habitat type. Maybe actually it's a good thing that I got distracted and I talked about it, because it certainly does have a niche that it's filling here. Anyway, we're going to take a look at a grass, not actually a grass in the family Cyperaceae, but to most people, it's basically a grass. Let me put the macro lens on, get you a close-up shot of those needles, and then get you a close-up shot of the sedge, blueberries, and then last but not least, if we still got time and if we can find it, we'll go see if we can find Dicentra cucularia, which I think somebody had said they had seen on another part of the reservation. So we'll go take a look. And you know what? If we're feeling extra frisky, we might even go look back at the spot where I had seen Antenaria, cool Nephaliae, cool paper daisy, and Hepatica americana, a really cool ranunc. Although I get the feeling that's probably too cold for the ranuncs to be open. All right, get you the foliage real quick. Alright, so there's a close-up on that foliage for you on the Juniperus virginiana. You got what look like the strobili, the male cones or something starting to form on the tips of those branches there, that light green stuff. And then there's that bark. Pretty typical of Cupressaceae, the redwood family, to get that shaggy bark. Beautiful! Don't get me wrong, I think it's a beautiful tree, but not everybody has a thorough appreciation for it. That's enough of that. Let's get you this Ooh, you can be out of focus for a second. This is the sloppy portion. So this is probably the first and last time you'll ever hear me talk about a graminoid that is a grass or, you know, something related to grasses. This is Pennsylvania sedge. This is Carex pennsylvanica, and I like it just because people, oh, grass don't have flowers, grass aren't flowers. Well, here's something in the order of grasses, poales, in flower. Those are the stamens sticking out there, and indeed grasses are angiosperms, just like any other flower. Just because you don't know what the flower looks like or you've never seen a plant in flower, don't automatically assume that it doesn't flower. And that goes triply so for house plants, because you're probably just not giving them the right conditions. And a lot of those house plants like Monstera, etc., produce beautiful flowers. They're just not in the right conditions. So specifically, this is a sedge. This is Carex pennsylvanica, if I didn't already say that, in the family Cyperaceae, which just like Juncaceae and Poaceae kind of make that that core group of what we'd call graminoids, grasses. There's a ton of other ones too. Rustianaceae down in the southern hemisphere is a really big one, a really cool one that I would love to check out someday. But yeah, this is a typical sedge flower. They're going off pretty early in the year, and they provide some interest. Why don't you could plant this instead of a goddamn lawn too. God, it'd be pretty cool to have a lawn of you would want the other stuff, just like a little shrubby lawn with Carex pennsylvanica and blueberry and Juniperus communis. It'd be pretty nice. Certainly more interesting than a lawn. All right, let's. God, my nose is running like a faucet. All right, let's find a nice little patch of Vaccinium angustifolium. I've only seen, about 1,000, but apparently none of them were good enough for my picky ass. So let's get to it. Well, my patience seems to have paid off, because I found a particularly productive plant here, and you'll have to excuse my excessive use of alliteration, because I'm a little bit. I ran out of good ones. Anyway, this is Vaccinium angustifolium. This is the Lowbush Blueberry, a important member of this sort of rocky habitat. You also see this guy in woodlands too, just generally on acidic soil, and he's accompanied by his more distant but somewhat more impressive counterpart over there, which I couldn't get the tripod in a good position. But let's talk a little bit about what we've got going on here. Hopefully that's not too loud through the camera mic, than me adjusting the tripod there. Anyway, so what we've got going on here, and I'll take the thing off and I'll zoom in for you in a second. This is a blueberry, Lowbush Blueberry, member of the family Ericaceae, a pretty common and prolific plant throughout the Northeast. You get it in forest understories, as I already said, and it's also a pretty dominant plant here up in these more scrubby communities, with the bare oaks and oh shit, I should also show you Comptonia peregrina while it's in flower. We'll go do that really quick. I haven't seen any yet, but we'll see what we can do there. Anywho, like I was saying, Ericaceae is the family, blueberry family, Vaccinium. A lot of different species in Vaccinium. Not even all of them are blueberries. Cranberry is also a species of Vaccinium. Bilberry is a species of Vaccinium. But why don't we take a look at the flower morphology here, because it's pretty interesting. Alright, so here's a close-up on this little cluster of blueberry flowers. 5 fused petals. And deep in there, if you can actually see, the lighting is not terribly good, but those are those anthers in there. And blueberries, and in fact, a lot of members in the family Ericaceae, Chimophylla, and some of the monotropes, if you remember, do this. They have what are called porous anthers. So those anthers don't open up like a hot dog bun. It's more like a salt and pepper shaker. And that's basically to withhold, pollen up until a pollinator actually gets up in there. It's a little bit more resource efficient for the plant. Striking pink colors on there, anthocyanins, stress pigments on emerging foliage. You can see what those emerging buds look like. It's really, really, really pretty. The shape of the typical blueberry flower, typical heath flower as well, in the genus Erica, the namesake genus of the whole family. It's called ursulate, meaning urn-shaped. You see this in Arctostaphylos, you see this in, it's a ton of different species, especially, Vaccini tribe, Ericae tribe, Erythronium certainly, which Vaccinium is in Erythronium. But then again, so is rhododendron, which doesn't have, flowers that look like this. So, not universal to the family, but certainly something you see, especially common in the family. If you've ever heard of Pieris, I could rattle off genera that have this type of flower structure all day, but no reason to do that. You get the little green stigma there in the center, and yeah, come the end of June about, you'll have the birds going to town on this. This is not, as I understand, usually used for commercial blueberry production. Vaccinium corymbosum, the high brush blueberry, is used much more frequently for that. But anyway, that's enough about that, and we'll get going to our next spot here. Yeah, pardon the decrease in quality. I had to switch back to my phone camera just because I want to save the last remaining battery I got on my phone. But if I'm not mistaken, we've got a really interesting plant right here. This is Urtica dioica, I think is what it's called. This is a stinging nettle. Urticaceae is the family. It's actually in the order of roses. It's actually pretty closely related to elm trees and to cannabis. Is it Urticaceae? Yeah, Urticaceae, Ulmaceae, Cannabinaceae, and then I think there's one other family, Formiclade, the four families there in the order Rosales. Yeah, you don't want to brush up against this guy. They don't feel too nice, although allegedly edible once you boil them down. Stinging nettle, Urtica dioica, I think is the name. Again, I could be very wrong on that. Got opposite leaves there. You can see the spines down in there. I don't know if the leaves sting you, if it's just if you brush up against the spines, but not too pleasant from what I've heard. Native plant, and a very cool plant. I think Pilia, which there's some house plants and then there's some native plants like frostweed. Has a really similar look to it, but it doesn't have. It's also in the same family, but doesn't have the doesn't sting. And I've seen that plant before. That'll be in a video that's going to come out eventually where I'm trying to figure out what I'm looking at. And what I was looking at was a Pilia, and I said, hey, that kind of looks like stinging nettle, which is this plant right here. Anyway, we're going to continue on. I think I'm down near where they saw this Dicentra, and if not, there's actually something else, or maybe a couple other things I can show you from over here. All right, I put the tripod away, and I kind of half gave up. I didn't find the Dicentra cucularia. That was a I think what happened there. First of all, that was from 2019. Second of all, the person who posted that really didn't seem to be too prolific on iNaturalist. So what I think happened is that's either the wrong location that they posted it. Of course, the plant could no longer be there, or something else had happened, some other mistake. But anyway, plant wasn't there, habitat didn't even look right. So I decided to come over here and just kind of wrap things up, and we get some interesting stuff over here. You've got down here what looks like Anemomoides, quinquefolia, the windflower, or wood anemone. Not sure, no flowers on it yet. That'll be blooming in a few weeks. If I'm surprised it's not blooming already, actually, or at least doesn't have the flowers out. But whatever. You got a Sempervirens foetidus everywhere. No longer in flower now, with those nice big poofy arum leaves. Quite nice. And then here you actually have a member of the Trillium family, Melanthiaceae. This is a plant that grows, I guess, from Georgia all the way up the East Coast. I've seen this plant 5,000 feet up on Mount Washington growing, and here it is growing streamside in scenic Boston, Massachusetts. Viride, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. So this is in the bunch flower family. So same family as Trilliums. Really weird flower. Really cool texture to the leaves, though. Highly toxic. Like most of the plants in that family are. Looks rather tropical, but like I said, this thing was getting huge, 5,000 feet up on Mount Washington in June. It was in bloom. Not in bloom here, it's just emerging for the year, but very, very cool looking plant. The flowers aren't nearly as showy as Trilliums, but it has a much more impressive floral display. Melanthiaceae, if I kept neglecting to say the family there. And you got Lindera benzoin, but that'll be in the previous episode I would have just done before this one. And you get this magnificent plant, which I, may have done, excuse me, miss, whatever. I may have done a brief episode on when I was first starting the channel. You've got one of my favorites here. You've got Caltha palustris, the so-called marsh marigold, but it's actually in the buttercup family, ranunculus family, anemone family, Ranunculaceae. Beautiful, beautiful plant. Blooms prolifically this time of year. I got this one growing behind my work, Caltha palustris, if I didn't say the name right. Common name is marsh marigold, and it's a stunner. So, cool little habitat back here. Look at the video, you know, whatever video I'm putting out previous to this, if you want to get a little bit more in depth on Lindera benzoin. I've talked about that plant a couple times. I got an old video about it, which does a good enough job. But I think we gotta wrap stuff up there. How you can see down here, that's one of the spent flowers from the skunk cabbage here. Cool little habitat down here. A whole bunch of that veratrum over there. It's a really cool plant. Hopefully I'll come back, I'll get it in flower. And oh yeah, it's everywhere. It's right there too. I'll come back, I'll get it in flower at some point, but this is a nice little spot here. And I think a good place to end this video. Yeah, I'll get the camera difficulties sorted out as we progress through the spring and summer, but just know I'm taking it all in stride as much as I can. So you have a nice day, and if you live near Boston, come out and check out the Middlesex Fells, because they're right here for you, and there's tons of good stuff to look at. Take it easy. Yeah, I spoke too soon about Anemomoides quinquefolia. It is starting to bloom. Ranunculaceae, if you can't tell from the foliage and from the fact that this guy's missing a calyx because he lacks true petals. His petals are his calyx. Those are sepals, and then they don't really have true petals. And then they get the the segmented foliage quinquefolia, because the leaf appears to be divided into 5 leaflets. Or I mean, it is a leaf divided into 5 leaflets, but appears to have 5 leaves. Really, this is just one leaf whirled around the inflorescence there, and then it's terminating into 5 leaflets. This is a cool one. This is one of my first ones I knew how to identify and got into. So okay, happy I did get to show this. I'm putting this in the announcement that I just filmed, and then I'm putting this in the Middlesex Fells video. But I think I got to get out of here. I think I'm losing my mind a little bit, as one tends to do, because of my goddamn fucking camera. Anyway, you take it easy. Thank you for bearing with me. I hope I got a lot of good content in this one. It felt good to come out and really do a full video for the first time, this season. And plenty more to come where that came from.